Afternoon, everyone. Sorry I'm a little late. I was getting the classroom ready, as it were. Let me turn my camera around so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. We're not only going to go over some of the basics of trail talk and communication with kana, kanji, and the most simple forms, the oldest trail talk forms. We're also going to go into a bit of how to place tools, what Neanderthals look like, past evidence of them, a little bit of comparison with the Neanderthal, Homo sapiens skull, Homo erectus, and our differences with the Neanderthal. So, before we get into that, hope you guys all had a great holiday. Sorry it took me a second today. I'm going to have to turn around here. Hey, doggo, can I have my seat? No? Alright. So, for those of you who have been keeping up with the backyard trading, I finally had some success. I finally got the tool, a tool, which is what I've been after for about a year now, trying to convince this little one to make me a tool, or give me a tool. Finally this year, I got a tool. My goal is always to find tools, because tools can help you place history, a point in time to start looking and expanding your research from. Language is great. Language establishes you the ability, even in rudimentary, childlike form, to start trading, to start gifting. And I know everybody says, don't beat the Bigfoot. Well, if they are Neanderthals or Homo erectus, then we're just feeding a genetic relative. So until somebody can tell me what the hell they really are, pardon my French, I'm going to go feed my ancestors the way my grandmother fed them. And I am still going to reap the benefits of what they give me, because I have lots of tools, which will help me identify where they fit into our already existing fossil record, and should help anybody else who's actually willing to do some research and look at these things for what they really are. They're not a fantastic mythical creature. Do the footprints look the same? Tell me, these don't look like prints you've seen before out in the wild. Well, these are petrified in stone in Africa. So, let me flip my camera around again. And we'll get into some of the basic trail talk. Now, trail talk is not sophisticated language. Trail talk is something every child in the Bigfoot community uses to communicate to their siblings, to their other family members, to each other. It is the very first, very rudimentary, most simple way to communicate. And the kana associated with trail talk, the very first kana that show up in trail talk. But trail talk is mostly just markers and pointing you where the things are, pointing you to a blind, a trade spot, maybe where a food stash has been stored, or where a tool for trade is stored. Trail talk is incredibly simple. It's also always pictorial. So it's the more literal, this thing is over here, this is a path to it, this is the direction you go, this is what you look for. Big A-frame looking thing, or a big box on the ground. It'll all be laid out. I'm sure if you've kept up with my trail talk videos, you will begin to notice there are certain repeated patterns. Alright, now when you're first trading, don't immediately assume that you know how to count in their language, that you know how to write down the kana that you need in order to respond to the kana that's been left. Trail talk eliminates that complication. You don't have to know their language in order to initiate a basic trade like I've been doing in the backyard here. The reason why I don't do all of the other filming and stuff is because I don't have permission to. It's not my property. I'm only a guest here. This is my little bit of research I'm being allowed to do, and I'm very thankful for that. So I'm not going to push my limits with this property owner. And that is also the same with my friend's property. There are things that we would like to do, but there are also some complications with what we can do because not everybody is on board with what some of us would like to try out there. So be patient. It might take these individuals more time to break into the concept that maybe there's something worth filming in their yards. But if you happen to have a yard that happens to have visitors, this might help you. All right, so let me throw my glasses on. Let me read what's been said. Oh, good. Glad you are here, Lanita. I know you have backyard visitors, and your recent post just blow me out of the water. Oh, and I want to do a recommendation to another channel other than Lanita's. She's got some really good stuff. I've already talked about Forest Friends, Debbie Mosley's site. There is a fellow in Australia called Victorian Cryptid Research. He's got some excellent videos on his channel, and he is doing a very similar thing to what I'm doing, the more urban settings where they're very close to humanity with plenty of ground floor around. So please go check out all three of those channels. You know, Lenita's got them in her backyard. The fellow in Australia, he has them in the park system real close to his home. And Debbie, Forest Friend, she just goes out. She's got a natural Oh my God, that woman is a natural tracker. She knows the terrain. She's drawn to the correct terrain. So she finds this stuff all the time. All of those channels are excellent in my opinion. So go, please check them out. Give them your support. Give them some likes. Subscribe to them. Talk about them. They have good material. Oh, thank you. They help me see, so that's a good thing. Hey, glad to see you in here from Alabama. All right, so I'm up here in Oregon. Let me get this turned around, and we're going to start making a few notes. I hope my battery lasts for at least 2 hours, because this is going to take a minute. All right, let me get this turned around. All right, so many of you may have seen this set of collected kana and kanji. This is the ground collection of language that I've done over the last couple of years. I've managed to isolate 50-ish symbols. I do have more, I just haven't had the time to translate everything yet. But I do have another probably 70 or 75 pictures of kana and kanji I still need to work out and translate and write down and bring you guys up to speed on it. So many of these you're going to notice are pretty complex. You know, some of these are very definitely complex kanji that portray full sentences in some case, like this one here. When when Jen Jen's eldest son came to tell me I was an ant, this is the kanji he laid down for me. I do have a picture of it on one of my other phones. So when you are dealing with trail talk, occasionally some of these kana and kanji will show up in the trail talk. But the most important ones for the most simplistic type of communication that will assure you some sort of basic response. The image, the X, what you can spare. It is an open-ended agreement that there is no binding contract. You don't owe them anything. They don't owe you anything. This is just what you can spare from today's meal that you can't eat and they can have. So that's an open-ended. That's where you always need to start if you're unfamiliar with a language. This allows them to lead you. So the next thing that you will most commonly see in their areas is the symbol for fire. Now, the kana for fire can be written in several ways and in a couple of directions. They all mean fire. When you start seeing these show up, you're getting closer to an area where there is likely trade happening. So if you're wanting to put something out to encourage them to trade with you, that's a good location. The other thing that you are going to most commonly see is the symbol for strong. There are, again, a couple of different ways that you can write strong. It can be just a simple box. It can be an accented box. Or it can be more modernistic. Let me think if I can even remember the kana for the modern. Because I'm using the oldest forms, the hiragana, katakana, pre-Edo period marks. God, I can't remember the modern one. But anyway, you'll see strong. Strong means that there has been a reciprocal relationship in the area of repeated giving, and the person has always been honest and reliable with what they give. So to see the emblem for strong means there is a already working relationship in the area. The next most common kana that you're going to find in Trail Talk is the petroglyph for man. Man can be written in 4 different ways and has 2 different meanings. Like most Asiatic languages, kanji and kana can have multiple meanings due to the context. So, the kana for man can be written like a 7, a backwards 7, an upside down backwards 7, etc. So when it is upright like these two, is either Bigfoot or Dogman, because they both use this same symbol for man, just one flips it the opposite direction. When this symbol is turned upside down, the kana means fish hook or spear, usually for fishing, a simple sharpened stick, or an intentionally made hook, like a bone hook. All right. So, with these basic little intonations, you can start communication. The next most important one that you will commonly find is the symbol for sakina. This is the general term for fish. Sakina can be written backwards or forwards like a C. Doesn't matter. The next rendition that you will find is a specific type of fish, like trout. Now I'm trying to write without looking at my hand. All right. Trout gives you the specific type of fish desired. You might also start seeing this kana a lot. This is the kana for dark moon, new moon, when there is no light in the night sky. Take heed when you start seeing this particular kana show up. It is important because dangerous cryptids, like dogmen, move around more during the dark moon. So be careful of that one. It'll let you know there's danger in the area. Again, also look for that petroglyph, the ryogen, the headhunter that takes you away. So, very simple. They don't look like much, but when applied, they can be incredibly useful for establishing basic trade agreements and beginning a reciprocal relationship with a local group of ancient humans, archaic people. So, I hope that has helped. Please go back, take a look at some of my past videos on kana and kanji, and some of these really basic communication layouts that you will find. The other most common thing that you will see pretty much everywhere is the kana for how much. This particular kana had a pointer with a leaf above it, which I included in the original drawing. However, how much can be written thus, or it can be written like this, or so, typically. Sometimes you'll see one that actually does the full opposite. Again, this is another weird example of transition of kana. They all mean the same thing, they're just all written in a slightly different way. That's probably due to the particular group's writing style. So, it may mean nothing more than that. Anyway, I hope this has helped give some idea about what to expect when you start seeing kana and kanji show up in trail talk or around on your property, etc. So, if you want me to do more stuff like this, let me know. I'll be happy to try to do so. Since I have a whole bunch more kanji, I still need to translate. So, you got any questions? Let me flip this back around. Hey, Donna. Welcome. I'm glad that you are here. Uh, and then some of the other things to consider, like this is a good language thing to consider. The word how, H-A-U, is the Lakota Sioux, my tribe's way of saying hello. Yeah, it's really odd. Same thing in some Asiatic languages. Interesting language connection. So maybe our Asiatic language actually comes from a far more distant time. It may have absolutely nothing to do with the continents that it's currently spoken on, is what I'm thinking. But anyway, that's conjecture and that's off to the side. So you guys interested in looking at some of these tool types and some of this stuff? Because that's where I'm heading next. And I do have a whole stack of these learning graphs. So I may include more of them as the season goes on. And my goal for this season is to hit up that mixed group down there, where the sun-faced individual is, that I got a picture of him holding a hammerstone in his hand. I have snuck into his area. He is a tool maker. He works mostly in basalt and granite. Some quartz. Whew. So, this next summer I'm going to be using myself as bait, being TV for the Bigfoot, playing with my dog in the stream, hopefully trying to catch an angle of him where I can film him making tools. Because if I can film him making tools, this little handful of stones becomes much more relevant. Now, the odd thing about these, they've all been collected in different locations through this valley, and all collected within this last year, specifically within the last 6 months. So this is a tool I collected from the Yaren group, about hour's drive southeast of here. This is a far more ancient tool in its type and structure than this one, potentially even that one. So, you've been introduced to this one. I haven't introduced you to these others yet. Let me put the puzzle pieces back together and close up this book. Oh, wait, no, there might be some here that might be useful. I think I have, a couple of pages of drawings of tools that I found on the West Coast throughout my life that have been common. Like, these are the types of tools you'll find in this area. Now, during the Neanderthal period, chert, flint, basalt, quartzite, hornzite, and I can't remember the other one. I think there were like 5 or 6 types of stone that were used for making tools. I took my anthropology course too many years ago. I can't remember them all off the top of my head now. I'm just giving you these images. These have been in videos I've done in the past, but I want you to take them back in. So, those stones on the Mohs scale for hardness are all between 5 and 7, meaning they're actually pretty tough. Obsidian is like glass, found about, 2 or 3 on the hardness scale? So, the individuals that knapped prehistoric tools had far stronger wrists than modern man. The reason why I can say that is because of the tensile strength of the stone. If we put enough pressure to knap these tools, we'd blow out the bursa sacs and the connective tissues in our wrists. We simply do not have the physical strength required to make basalt tools, red jasper tools, or even quartzite tools. We make glass tools. So keep that in mind. Neanderthals were heavier boned, barrel chested, wide nostriled, brow ridged, and they still had all of their plantars, tendons, and muscles, 3 layers potentially of muscle, like another greater primate on the planet we call a gorilla. So keep that in mind, especially when we're thinking about where we might be able to find an answer to what Bigfoot and other such cryptids could potentially be, and how we might be able to find a way of interjecting them into our historic record, because they've been there all along. We just haven't known how to categorize their tools yet. Nor have we caught enough information on what they do in their daily lives to be able to verify any of this. It's all still conjecture without a film of them doing it, and then proof that they exist. So, let's first get into some of the tools here. So this graph page actually has 5 ancient stages of tool making. This is the previous Oldemon period, which is like 200, let's see, let me think, 2.5 million years, around the time of Lucy, which means there would have been, Australopithecus in the area, those smaller haplospecies. This is the next period where there started to be a transition where they weren't just picking up a tool and, picking up a rock and knocking off edges to make a big tool. They were actually using it as a core to make other tools. So going from single production to mass production. Then you get into this more modern 160,000 to 40,000 year old period where we refine our tools and we start going from really hard materials like quartzite going down into obsidian and softer materials like jade even, which is only a 2 on the Mohs scale, if I remember correctly. So everything probably from the last 40,000 years we can assume is modern man. Anything before this time period, in my mind, has to be questionable at this point. All right. And this is also, the end result, a streamlined, bifacial, well-tuned, managed, shaped piece. This is a representation of an oval hand axe, also made out of softer material. So let me get over to the tools that I have not shown you. Now this one was found in the backyard here in Eugene. These were both still found in the Willamette Valley, but in 2 completely different locations further south of here. This one was found an hour's drive away, southeast of here. This is about a 45-minute drive directly south of here. Now, this one fits into this timeline of worked material. It even has a not made but pre-chosen stone that had an appropriate groove in the back for mounting before it was chipped into a tool. The tip is also broken off, so this has been used. The circumstances of the find for this one, I traded for that one, and it took me a year. Sat in a stream, watching the sun-faced person make his tools, letting him watch me for half the summer. The last time I went there, this was sitting in the middle of the stream bed where I'd been watching him from, with 2 massive markers on either side of the stream pointing to where it was. So I literally found this one in water sitting on top of a stone. So look at, now this image here has 2 images actually represented. This lower half round is not part of this tool type. This is the other most common found back chipping on this type of tool type. So I have the most common found type of mounting chip. I don't have this more modern. I have the more archaic in this stone here. So it's got a shelf. It has a divot. According to my father, because he learned his tool napping from Native Americans along the west coast and up into Ontario, up in the Okanagan area of Canada. So he told me a lot about napping when he was showing me how to make tools when I was young. And I had to wait until I was 6. I wasn't allowed to even touch chert until I was 6. My wrist bones had to be strong enough or I could have broken them. So this has a single mount piece on the back, according to my father, and in the front they used a prong, so a split in the front to mount it this way. These, according to him, were fishing tips. So even if your tip busted, broke, got lost, you still had 3 prongs you could nail your fish with. They weren't bigger game style tips. These are for like big salmon and huge fish, big catfish, things that are massive in the water, groupers, crap like that are freshwater but massive, or saltwater and close and massive. So they're a driver point. That's why they have this place to put a brace. Okay. So this one fits into this about 106 period. And we've got these tools, that type of tool, already in our fossil record. This guy, though, doesn't have the refinement of the modern tool. It's got a primarily untouched back, though its shape is absolutely consistent. Okay? So again, the stone was chosen as a chipped stone for mass production, taking the outer piece off the stone in almost perfect form with minimal shaping to refine it. So this one fits somewhere in this category of tool making, putting it back to roughly 2.5 million years. That came from the Yeren group. I traded for that piece as well from the tool maker out there that I have had contact with. Took me 2 years to get him to give me a tip. So let me show you close up of the napping on this particular tip. You've got this very prominent style bifacial crack. Okay? You've got the wedge mount needed. You've got a third chip here that reduced the mass at the bottom so it be mounted this way. On the back, there is chipping. It's incredibly minimal. A sharpening chip there, a couple of sharpening chips here, and again, it's been used, the tip's been broken off. They will give you old tools that they've already busted. So that puts this guy all the way back over here. So my dilemma is, within this valley, we've got Yeren tools that's design goes back about 2.5 million years. You have somebody in the mixed group making, 160,000-year-old type tools. And then you got the little guy, the Skookum, who is also making a Neanderthal style tool. Now this one, there's no water damage to this one. It's a fresh stone. You can see where the new internal material has been exposed. It's clean. It sparkles. It's not, covered in gook or a waxy film from being underground or in water. It's all clean. It's got some very specific shaping done to it. Has some very specific edges that have been used for scraping down fibers. And for this life-sized piece, it's very, very close in shape and character, even to the chip pattern type. It's got that bevel on the top, has this tri-face nipping here. One face, two face, three face. It has this untouched, unnapped area, like this one. That's a very good match. You're gonna, put that in as a dig reference, so you could time period that one. Now this one, it obviously has water wear. Wherever it has been kept, it's worn down. You can see some of the sharpening on the backside, but again, it's also minimal. You can tell that this stone was chosen, again, from a core type setup. Mass production. So, if we're trying to come up with some timeline just from the tools you can find, and you can find I found axes, hammers, I found all kinds of stones, spear points, arrowheads, little chippers. I've even found down in the mixed group some of these little guys. I've got them in film. I didn't collect them because I wanted to leave them behind, but they're still in film. I show you this stuff all the time while I'm going into these locations. So, if you're looking at a archaeological timeline within which these tools span, somewhere between 2.5 million years and roughly 40,000 years ago is the timeline of their tools. It's all prehistoric still. So, hope that helps give an idea of where we might be able to place some of their tool types. And the material is correct. This is basalt, this is quartzite. Neanderthals both used that. This is jasper. That still fits into the hornzite genre of stones. So it's the appropriate materials, appropriate tool types, designs, and usages. I don't know how much clearer it has to be. Unless, I've even found some stones like this that still had fibers attached to them. Elm bark or alder bark, sometimes yucca bark, or not bark, but yucca leaf material from the blades. I've seen these stones throughout my life. Sometimes they still have stuff attached. I've seen a majority of tools, all from this time period, all by these designs. This stuff in basalt is really common. Finding core pieces like these or chip tools like this is very common in this area, and almost always out of basalt or something harder, like I've seen them made out of granite, that sort of thing. Up north in Washington, they make a lot of stone tools out of granite up there. So these are things to watch out for when Bigfoot starts giving you rocks. Are they a tool? Are you unaware that they might be a tool? Please look at them. Take a real good look. Grab a magnifying glass and a good light. Is there any wear? Is there clean surfaces? Is there any place where something's been handled? Is it chipped? Take a better look at it. That's all I'm saying. Take a better look. All right. Let's push this off to the side for now. And gonna go here to skulls and skull shapes. Now recently, I posted a still screenshot of a Oma Bigfoot inside profile from my friend's property. Actually, hang on, I got one more image that might help out here. Let me look at my stack. Australopithecus. Nope, these guys. Alright. So recently I showed you guys, and if you haven't seen the picture, the screenshot of the individual on my friend's property, please go look at my post section. You'll see a chimpanzee looking face down in the brush line. Now, a couple of people that saw it initially thought it was a dog man or a dog. Couldn't understand why. Then I got to looking at the facial structure. What would make somebody think this might not be a primate? What was the characteristic that was throwing them off? And I think I figured it out. It was the angle of the face that was messing people up. It wasn't a straight chimpanzee-like round face. The face in the image is slightly protrusionary, has a slight bit of an angle. This might make an individual think that this lower jawbone is a muzzle, when it's actually just the shape of the head, the lower jaw and the way it sits. You know, more forward. You see, all primates' faces are more forward in the bone structure. So it could be that, some Oma are being mistaken for dogs when they're actually a primate with a protruding face. Now, the one on the left is a chimpanzee. The one on the right we're descendants of. So, that's something to consider. Let's get back to the basics here. So there are a few major differences with the structure of Neanderthal, Erectus, and us sapiens. Majority of it is the angle of the face. We have an almost 50-degree angle. They have almost a 45. Add flesh to that, and you have a much different look to this face. The other thing that's interesting about Neanderthals is they have the occipital bun in the back of the skull, just like a greater primate. Ours is smaller. Homo erectus still had one. Not as pronounced, not as big, but he didn't need it as much as Neanderthals. Why is this and this protrusionary front there? So let's go back to modern skull and an archaic skull. Here, that massive ridge line. That's where the connective muscles attach to the back of the skull on its body. Okay, so this would lead to massive shoulder muscles. This little tiny spot right there, that little oval, is our muscle mass that holds our skull on our neck. It's half the size. If we had the same muscle structure, this particular portion of the skull, which is a suprachiasmatic fossa, would be extended all the way back to here. And we'd have incredibly wide, thick muscles near our ears and across our shoulders. I don't think Neanderthal looked like a modern man, at least not in the shoulders or the neck. So here's some of the breakdown of the Neanderthal skull. You've got the occipital bun. You've got that muscle attachment area. You've still got the upright skull attachment. You still have a butterfly bone inside the skull. But you have a couple of other, You got a longer, flatter, lower brain case because your muscles are thicker. You have a heavier brow ridge and a thicker jaw because your muscles are heavier. You have a wide nasal cavity because you have a broader nose. It's kind of food for thought, in my opinion. And then when you start looking at, ancient prehistoric footprints, and, just the footprints that you can, film where you go hanging out with Bigfoot, funny characteristics start popping out. The shape of the walk, the shape of the foot, even the bear-like shape of the foot occasionally. Now these are petrified in stone in Africa. I think these are in Ethiopia or around that area. Somewhere close to where Lucy was found, if I remember right. The foot shape. That's indicating to me that we don't have a greater primate in America. We potentially have a archaic humanoid. And then with the exception of more modern sculpting, the art that you might see, now these are Neanderthal things here. This is an atlatl handle, the thrower niche. You've got, the cave art, the sats in Louvier, France, if I remember right, or Louvier, France. Excuse me, I'm shitty with French. The tool types, with the exception of a needle. These people, modern Neanderthals, don't use a needle. They use a awl instead, potentially. You still find atlatls, still find all of this stuff. Occasionally I find not bone fish hooks yet. I have found one made out of spikes that was glued together with tar. I have been told by natives the further north you go, the more chances you'll find them made in bone. That they're still very archaic and not like their tribal stuff. Like not made by the same tool makers, so to speak. So anyway, I hope this live has been entertaining and maybe giving you guys some food for thought. So I'm going to try to use more graphs like this. I might even go make some if I can find some reliable information that I want to show you and share that I can, maybe connect something to, hopefully. So if anybody ever did take this seriously, get them to trade tools with you. Try to isolate where the tool period is. Isolate the materials. Try to isolate where the individual is that makes a tool, if you can. Keep trading with them. Try to find them. Try to film them during the day making tools. When you go out in the woods and you hear repeated clacking sounds like wood chopping, or you're hearing something knock, 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 knock all the time, or a pow and then nothing. Little pows, so stone, not wood on wood. You're probably hearing tool making. If you can isolate that individual, if you can film them during the day making a tool, there's proof. That's a little proof. Without physically having some sort of way of documenting the creature making the tool, these really mean nothing. You can say whatever you want. Oh, you found them, they fell downhill, they got washed out by a storm. Any excuse can be made for the existence of them, or they can be completely disregarded. When I took my mother's hand axe in, I took it into an anthropological exhibit where they were identifying archaic tools for free. I took in a pestle from a flat grinder and my mom's jade hand axe. The experts at the college, the professors hosting the event, were absolutely titillated. My grinding stone even still had acorn flour on it. They googed in God over this freaking hand axe. Then they asked me what part of Africa I got it from. I said, no, it wasn't collected in Africa. It was collected on the west coast, Jade Beach, California. They told me it was a chip that had fallen down and probably accidentally made that shape. And then it was completely disregarded. Though the grinding stone was still considered perfectly fine because it fit their, you know, what they wanted to admit. So the reason why they might choose not to recognize tools like these is because it proves something. Maybe even proves something they are already aware of. Alrighty. Let me get off my high horse and I'll talk to you. Answer questions. Oh my god. So I hope this has been an eye-opener. This is why, another reason why I stick to my grandmother's guns about they're probably just an archaic human of some kind. Too much stuff is way too suggestive in my mind to think that they're a myth, something that walks out of a spaceship, or a dimensional whatever that doesn't eat. Plenty of tools around saying they eat and make fibers, and you can even find twisted rope, all kinds of weird stuff. Structures, all of it. It's highly suggestive. If we start looking at it in a more methodical way, maybe there's enough of us to make a difference. And maybe there's enough of us to proof this without an expert. Maybe there are enough of us that are good with cameras and understand a little bit about tracking and find these tools, can maybe figure it out without them. I don't think we actually really need them. I think there's plenty of evidence left in our fossil record. We just have to re-examine what we've already got. And then we also have to examine what we find in our current daily lives. And start using their science to proof that they aren't willing to touch. And at least now we've got a rough timeline. Somewhere between 2.5 million years ago and roughly 40,000 years ago, these guys no longer associated with us and we lost contact. We aren't aware that they're there, but they're still there. At least it's a potential possibility. Alright, let me go up, take a look at everybody's chat. Okay. Alright. I'm a new friend to you from Joshua. Wow. In Bangladesh. Welcome. Pleased to have you here. It's an honor. Oh yeah, you're more than welcome, Lanita. I know that you've been gifted many things, and I'm sure over the years you've been wondering what the heck some of this stuff is. Personally, grab your Google Lens, start taking pictures of these tools, see if Google Lens places them. I haven't tried that yet, but it's worth a shot. Yeah. Some of the stuff that Google Lens can just pick up out of the internet for you with a real quick search, especially when they've got a comparative picture, it can be quite amazing. Sometimes it's junk, but sometimes you hit pretty good. What does an upside down Y mean? I know that some dogmen and some other cryptids will hang an upside down Y, usually really huge, about man-sized, over a branch in a tree, as a big marker to say this is a meeting spot, someplace you and I can meet or we can gift each other at. When my friend got in the fist fight with the dog man, once they started associating with each other, the dog man put a half a freaking tree upside down, leaning against another tree to mark the spot where they were going to meet. That was their friendly spot. He showed it to me. I haven't taken pictures of it yet. I'll go out and do that so you have a massive example of it, because I think that marker is about 10 foot tall. It's It's huge. But yeah, an upside down Y like that's typically a meeting place where you can trade or where they'll sit or you can sit with them. And that's usually dogmen, but there are a few other mountain boogers have been known to do it, and a couple of other more archaic acting cryptids will usually use a Y marker like that upside down. And they're usually pretty good size, 6, 8 feet. Yes, I'm glad you understand that one. I mean, if you've done any metallurgy and you've had to figure out metal strength, or you've done any gem cutting and you've had to figure out stone strength so that you could choose the appropriate grits to work with. That's how I learned my initial stuff was from stone cutting. Um, it's very important to understand what kind of strength is really required for the material type. Because I have repeatedly tried with, basketball sized pieces of granite and basalt to hammer throw them, wearing safety glasses, a leather coat, and a freaking helmet. Because in the event that I actually did break one of those stones, I didn't want it flying, shards at me to clobber my ass. I've tried multiple times with, up to like 20-pound stones, trying to throw them at each other, trying to drop them on each other, trying to slam them as hard as I could. The most I get, nothing. I get like a scar on the surface. I can't even crack those stones. I'd love to see somebody put these. I'd love to see somebody make that happen. I just am not strong enough to do it, and I don't know what is. I don't know what the strike force would need to be in order to use a basalt tool or a granite tool to make another basalt or granite tool, or if you'd need something like diorite to strike that stuff with just to chip it. I don't think anybody's done any testing in that regard. I don't know. Maybe there's some geologists out there that have. I'm really curious to know more about what it would take to actually make a tool out of some of this material. Because, we got this assumption in our head, oh, well, I don't think so. I think they were far more robust. Oh, you're welcome. I'm so that you over more thought into the process. What's really going on out there? What can we really prove? How can we prove it? Tools would be a great way of proving it, but we still have to connect the type to something that made it. Then there has to be some, other accepted recognition of the creature. Film a dozen of them, you know, within 20 feet making tools, that might be a sell point, but about something obvious uh, right in front of you, I don't think anybody's going to pay attention. But it's an avenue. It's a real good potential avenue. I'm sorry, my phone is paused now. It's weather-wise here. Well, that's exactly what I was afraid was going to start. Well, that's exactly what I was afraid was going to start happening. All right, so yeah, the reception up here has been spotty. I am sorry. If it gets too bad, I'll just jump off and we'll resume at a later date. I'm so glad you guys have had a good holiday season and that you've had a good New Year's. I'm glad that I got some material to present and some, potential avenues to think about. I'm so glad you enjoyed the informational display. I think it's needed. You know, refresh our memories on this sort of thing, especially if we're out there, messing around with these things. And that would also, lead more into if they are an archaic critter like a Neanderthal or some sort of Homo erectus, whatever Politica, blah, blah, what might be out there that we don't know about yet. It would stand to reason that the evidence would be similar, you know. So, yeah, though it is conjecture and theory, it's an avenue. Yes, have to look at things from all angles, possibilities, not just the projected historical narratives. And, yep, circulate. Do not want to be changed. Yes, and there's a lot of that, especially in the ecclesiastic world. You get a upper division in college. Oh my God, there's so much resistance. I became the most hated individual in my college when I started talking about Bigfoot. Let me tell you. Heck, I'm pretty sure that's why my primatology teacher hated me. Although my anthropology teachers liked me, they were more open about it. And they're the ones that started pointing me to the fossil records and to look at tool types and stuff like that. Something that, hadn't realized I could do. I knew it was there, duh, but I just hadn't put it together. And thankfully, some of my professors went, hey, why don't you take a look at this stuff over here? Here are some skulls to play with. What do you think of these little models? Is this what you see out in the woods? And that's when I discovered that the facial structure to some of these things, like the guanche, look, look a lot like P. robustus, a really thick-faced ancient ancestor of ours. That puts that, that's back at the 2.5 million Lucy time. Though, I wish I had this information when I was with more than encounters previously in life and my adventures behind my house in the mountains, state forest. Yeah, it might have helped you learn, might have given you some avenues to pursue. And there aren't any Bigfoot researchers out there that are trying to connect dots like this. At least, not many that I've seen that are being very vocal about it. And I think it's needed. I think we need to start considering that, maybe we're just missing information. It's not like we have a complete record of anything on this planet. So, there's plenty of room for potentials there. Now, trail talk actually is something that ancient man still shares with modern primates. Chimpanzees and gorillas, some, I think, baboons, and I think rhesus or macaques all use little grasses and sticks and directional pointers and little images to designate things like direction, distance, etc. So in this most primary stage of life, there's going to be potentially a lot of crossover behaviors. Things that are still around in modern apes that we don't think might have been at one time also human behaviors or ancestors of humans' behaviors. Something to consider, especially since, indigenous people still use some of this stuff. Hunters still hang a man-shaped marker in a tree to say, hey, this is my trail, I'm going down. We still put a stone in a trail when we are out hunting. We don't know which direction. If we're not familiar with the area, we'll put a stone down or we'll put some marker on the ground, even maybe arrows laid out with a stick. So, if we double back by accident, we know we've crossed our path. These are all just basic survival markers. How you traverse a terrain. We just don't use it because now we rely on street signs and roadways to take us where we go. We don't walk around the world in a natural way anymore. So we don't even think about this stuff. It's irrelevant to us now. But, maybe we should remind ourselves. Might help us get into a mental perspective where we can climb a little bit further into the mindset of a prehistoric humanoid. If you can start thinking about your target species and how they might behave and where they might sit and what they might do, yeah, you'll sit along the edge of a stream watching the water flow, listening to the meditative sound of it while you're making stone tools. Seen a lot of that evidence. You might hang out in a stream bed or next to a river or an ocean or a waterway or something so you can hear the natural trickle sounds as you're grinding pigment. Seen a lot of evidence of that. Take a look at old Pueblo structures and where they did stuff. You look at indigenous tribal, go look up some indigenous tribal sites and where did they put stuff? Did they make their stone tools all in one area? Yeah, because the shards are sharp. You don't want your kids playing in shards that you just snapped off. They're glass sharp. They'll go through the bottom of your moccasin. Ah, you can make your tool somewhere off in the woods, up on a high place or somewhere where the flakes can wash downstream later, where it's no danger. We need to start thinking in a more holistic way. Okay, Chan. My mom found a funny rock that was smooth, half oval. It had a pitted divot with white particles running the length. It was dark red jasper. I believe it was from the Oregon Cascades or Central Range, Coastal Range. Oh yeah, I found a ton of tools out in those ranges. And they're usually made of jasper. A lot of red jasper. I've even seen yellow jasper tools up in that area. So jasper is one of the working materials they love in that coastal range. I've seen a lot of that throughout my life. That's an awesome thing, too. I'm so glad she was able to find something like that. Hey, Happy New Year, Dash. Or Shizzle. The Shizzle, excuse me. Tina, I'm fascinated by your teachings. And thank you. I tried to go to college to educate myself in a way that would allow me to understand more than just the physical world. How does society form? What are the first steps that we do? Do we write on the ground? Do we signal to each other? Do we make calls? How do we disguise ourselves when we move? So, my professors hated it because I kind of wrote my own degree. And it was like combined, classic studies with anthropology, archaeology, religious studies, linguistics, folklore. I try to get a good, even smear of information. And then with a little bit of, learning a bit about, primate diet and primate behaviors and exposing myself to a little bit of, Diane Fossey's work and some of the great names in primatology in the last 50 to 100 years. See what they did, trying to wrap my brain around how would I have acted if I were a hairy human? Was it like the way my mom taught me? Was it what my grandmother, taught me? Was everything the way on my turnout? Is that really how we used to live? Are these really factors in ancient life that we don't think about? Because we think it was a slow progression. Well, if you're trying to survive in a family group and you're trying to communicate with each other, not everybody is going to go out foraging at the same time. Or if they do, you're going to be working cooperatively, no matter your age, to catch food that day. So that's going to require you concealing yourself from whatever is going to catch you, hunting your target creature, whatever that might be, If it's a root, go dig it up. If it's a mouse, you're going to have to wait for it. If it's a small game, you're going to have to run it down, create a trap. You're going to have to communicate. So was that all done with pointing? Was it done with calls? Was it done with pointing and calls? Was it done with markers on the ground? Could I lay something down and have my partner find it later and we'd both catch up at the same site for the same deer? These are things that we don't consider. We think that they maybe came along in succession with thousands of years between. I don't think so. If you're trying to cooperate with a family group, and you're trying to live with each other, you're trying to survive together, you're going to find ways of communicating. It's just the natural way of things. As long as that simple communication can be taught to the next individual over, like a like a macaque monkey rinsing rice, something monkeys never did until humans taught them to rinse stuff, like a raccoon. You're going to share tactics. Whatever that survival tactic is, it's useful. You're going to teach it if it's useful, and it's going to be repeated. So those are things that I don't think a lot of us consider. How in depth was the communication, and how in depth was it needed to be in order to survive? I'm glad you find it interesting and intriguing, DeShizzle. Oh, cool. I'm glad to see the happiness in your step there, Lenita. Hiding and lurking in the backgrounds with my nose in the book, trying to figure it out. Take care. I'm so glad you were here, Lenina. So yeah, Phil, there's a Y branch hanging in an area I've had many experiences in. Good to know the relevance. I felt that it was intentional meaning. Yeah, most likely is. Okay. What the heck happened to you, Cosmic? Did you fall offline there for a second? You're having the same issue I was having, huh? Okay. Phil, I think you were on Mark, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, not extinct. Yeah, I'm beginning to think my grandmother's lore about there being some sort of archaic human. Their tools suggest it. The print types suggest it. Even, some of the profiles in the pictures look really a lot like ancient skulls we found. It makes me question a lot. Then, that might also be a real good explanation why no government wants to tackle that particular problem. Because all of a sudden that makes them all needing rights. Because they're all relatives. Maybe that's also why there's such a big spiel about, oh, they can't possibly be genetically connected to us. They're like some sort of platypus pea soup. Funny thing is when my dad got my DNA test back, that was kind of the reaction out of the specialist. Platypus pea soup is what my DNA was considered. Okay, DeShizzle, no, not bad. And it would have made a lot of sense seeing some of these things on tree stumps, wondering why they were there. What were their meaning? Yeah. I've walked along in the middle of the wood and seen some really weird stuff. Anything from tools sitting on top of a stump. It looked like some caveman just set them there. To, half-eaten things that shouldn't have been in the woods. There's a yarn that likes sea cucumber. Every once I'll find half a eaten sea cucumber. Oh, 200 miles from the shore. Not really. It's only about 60 miles from the coast from here. About an hour's drive. But still, a bite mark and it laid down on the top of stump like I just disturbed somebody in their afternoon meal and made him leave his favorite food behind. Next time I find something like that, I'm going to film it. But, sometimes you find some really bizarre stuff out in the woods that you never expect. Down in the redwoods, finding starfish half eaten in the middle of the redwoods. No reason for it to be there. And not eaten by anything that looked like a bird because it had 321 bite mark. You know, 2 front teeth, 2 side teeth, and then the inside of it's a 321 bite mark. Okay. Corrected typos. Oh my gosh. Welcome back, Cosmic. Full spectrum research. Multidisciplinary approach. Yeah, and that's exactly what I felt that I needed. I felt that I had to, because some of the stuff that Jen told me about, the making of masks and the religious reverence for her little sister when she drowned, the mourning process, to me that's far more like a human, archaic human, than anything a primate would do. So part of the reason why I chose the educational path that I did was I wanted to have some sort of ability to communicate, some of the behaviors and some of the things that Jen talked about, the Bigfoot that lived on our property for a few years when I was a kid, and some of the things I saw her do, and the behaviors, like taking care of the little flying squirrel and correcting me when I would try to call it and telling me, no, it's got to go back. And she understands concepts that are far more human in thinking than anything even Coco did. Now, Coco still had an extensive vocabulary, 2,000 words, and enough to communicate emotion and thought, and, whether she thought it was better to be a primate or a human, and whether or not humans got it going on, and she didn't think we did. She thought we were missing a lot of stuff. So even her mind had enough reasoning capacity to understand our world. Which makes, why Bigfoot might be so difficult to find. Maybe they are far more expertise at being human than we are. Okay. Cosmic. The sun structure deemed Pueblo in the southwest, like in the Grand Canyon, have certain design principles that I see with my local Sasquatch structures. Burnt plasma wood, square type notches, etc. That would be some interesting comparisons. Have you ever considered doing structure comparisons? Because I would love to see some comparisons of that. Maybe that would give us some more ideas about how to classify them or how to talk about them or how to bring them forward to the scientific community in a manner that they'd understand. Hey! Welcome in. Glad to see you, Elizabeth. Mitch, is there lore on how the cryptids were created? Well, Jen, the Oma female Bigfoot that lived on our property, when I asked her how she came into this world, how she believed she was created, She said her species, like all species on this planet, were polywogs in a massive polywog pond once upon a time. So back in archaic history, back in the Ordovician period, which is 257 to 325 million years ago, our planet was covered with water and very scant in life forms. The little free-roaming critters that were around were plankton eaters. There weren't anything that was truly free-roaming at that point. Everything was anchored to the ocean floor. The Ordovician period had an incredibly high carbon dioxide point, a spike of 24%. That's when life began on this planet. That's where she claimed all life came from. She didn't have any concept of a, a creation myth, so to speak. She believed that the creator made the great polywog pond and then put the polywogs in the pond to grow up to be different things. That's how her concept was of creation. The only creator was the guy that stocked the pond. And that's why you owe the creator reverence. Because without the polywog pond and you being a polywog, you never would have grown up to be the humanoid you are today. Sorry. But that was Jen's way of explaining when I asked her where she thought she came from. She gave me, quite literally, a very realistic definition of an archaic period that was and is known of. So, she didn't talk about, being a Nephilim or a Aeolin or whatever that stuff is. No, her way of thinking was much more in a geological way. Just the natural order of things. Everybody comes from a polywog pond. We all came from the same polywog pond. That's how she saw the world. So I won't argue with her logic. It makes geological sense, and it also makes, biological sense. Okay. Makes a lot of sense because Nakasha, State Forest, was well known for Native people annually migrated through these areas, specifically for rocks for making tools, and of course, game and food. Oh yeah, we've got an old pathway between three buttes over in Central Oregon. It's called the Black Butte, Red Butte, and White Butte, and they're all volcanic glass buttes, and there are still old pathways between the original routes, between the mountains where natives would go and visit and pick up, material to be traded to, or to be made into tools and then traded, etc. So it's, common behavior. Okay. Varix question. When referring to the Sabe people specifically, in your opinion, how many variation of hairy men could be populating Mother Earth today? My native grandmother claimed that she was aware of somewhere between 200 and 240 species of different hairy men. Be they Skookum, Guanch, Oma, Gugway, Ishka, etc. Those were all separate, in her mind, separate types of humanoids. So roughly 240 at the outside that we are unaware of. And we all think they look like Patty. They don't. It's the other thing I'm hoping my lens will help clarify this upcoming summer. I'm hoping to get a lot of good, close, in focus proofs. Okay. Shizzle. I know the one that I see had had a Neanderthal looking face and a wide spade human-like nose, but more ancient looking. Yeah, I can believe that. Um, when you look at the mixed group and some of the screenshots from that group, you get like the widest selection of facial structures I've found so far within a group, because it seems like the mixed group uh, is like a composite group of some kind. Like either there's a bunch of groups that come together in that area, and they're all from different families, and they all associate and trade with each other, or it's just got a lot of different genetic individuals in the group. I'm not sure. I know that that group comes to that stream bed, or those groups, technically, come to that stream bed from 3 different locations. So it's likely that the mixed group's actually multiple groups hanging out in the same area. The one really big individual, excuse me, that I have a straight across shot of, I call him the giant. He looks like an incredibly archaic freaking caveman in the face. Just down from him, maybe 200 yards, was the sun-faced person who looks more or less modern human in the face, but just massive in structure and freaking hair covered. And then the next individual, maybe another 40 feet away from the sun-faced person, looked like a troll mixed with the gorilla. Again, incredibly archaic, very primate-looking facial structure. So all 3 of those individuals I filmed, I think, in the same day, and they were no more than maybe 400 yards up and down that stream edge. And I caught many different facial structures. So God only knows how many of them live together, cooperate together, trade together, interact together, marry together. I mean, we know that we could mate with Neanderthals. These things probably all can mate with each other, and they probably could still mate with us, because there's still some lore of that sort of thing going on, just even a couple 100 years ago, not even 100 years ago in some cases. So, it makes me question a lot at this point. Platypus. Yeah, love it. Yeah, I like it actually. I think it's poignant, and I think it's actually kind of truthful. And recently there was a very platypus-like DNA structure that was found with, I think, 20 or 30 different species as the parent species to whatever cryptid DNA they found. That would make total sense. From the lore that Uncle Ong told me, he claimed that in really prehistoric times, there were a lot of species that could cross-pollinate, as it were. Even though they weren't defined species yet, everything could intermingle for the most part. There was a lot of that went on in really ancient times. And that would make sense, if we were a burgeoning pea soup, as it were, of things that hit the planet, or things that came up out of the soil when the planet formed, or however heck the creators decided to design us here. We still had some sort of growth pattern we went through, and a facial period where cats and dogs may not have been very different, or that, 2 little tiny microscopic critters may have been able to cross-species breed. Maybe they still do. Maybe that's why we've got some of these really bizarre little extremophile creatures in our world. They later adapted, or maybe they just stayed in the pea soup they were created in. Maybe they were already adapted. So, there's a lot of things we can maybe consider about it. So that That new potential DNA sample might not necessarily be suggesting that it can't crossbreed with us, but it might be suggesting that it came from something far more complex and far more ancient than we realize. You know, some of these creatures are completely hairless. Like the one little, not little, he's about 11 or 12 foot tall, skinny, tall giant that I got a really crappy picture of because he's standing right behind a tree. He's completely naked, bald as a baby. Looks very human. Doesn't look primate in the face at all. I really need a better picture of that guy. God, I need a good picture of that guy. Pretty sure that big giant, that massive stomp print that my co-author and I found. Okay. Bees are, I found out that they don't like grapefruit and I had to teach them how to peel oranges, otherwise they would end up throwing their guts. Yeah, when I was up in Washington, I tried trading various types of food. I tried oranges. They didn't like the oranges, and when they did try, that particular group did try it, they bit through the skin, so bad taste, they didn't like it. They understood bananas, they could peel a banana. They'd try a sweet potato, but they wouldn't take it. You could see where they'd take a bite of it, they'd chew it, but they'd put it back down. So, you know, some food selections are not what they like. You put down watermelon, um, jerky, pears, uh, strawberries, cheese, stuff like that. They scarf it up. Unusual. Yeah, you'd think if they were more animalistic, they'd grab anything and eat it, like any other primate does, or any other human would, potentially. But they seem to have certain flavor choices and texture choices. To me, that tells me they're a little more discerning in what they want to take in. That also might be why they clean their food before they eat it. Because that's the other thing that you can find if you're following a stream edge. If you start seeing remnants of terrestrial ivy, like leaves scattered, or lengths of pulled apart ivy vine dropped, or little pieces of bark dropped. Then you get down into the water's edge and you see that same sort of debris, and then you start seeing moss and other unusual debris like bones or sometimes skins. You'll find a food spot where they've washed their food. They take a food ball. Now, some of the Bigfoot people make a food ball very much like a gorilla makes. They will wrap all the items in just vines, and what they use is terrestrial ivy for the most part, with bits of bark and other stuff to kind of pad the items inside. Then they'll take it down. I'll drag this ball with them. As they get closer to the water, they start pulling it apart. They'll get down into the water and they'll pull it apart. They'll take all of their food items out. Sometimes they'll skin smaller animals right there and they'll leave little remnants behind. Occasionally they'll eat something and they'll leave a few bones behind. Sometimes you will find little discarded tools like glass tools where you find the food ball debris in waterways. You'll find this in streams, lake edges, river edges, you know, a spot where there's a divot where it can wash away. They'll pull these little balls apart there. You'll find all kinds of unusual stuff where they do this. When they discard a sponge ball for moisture collection, which is something that gorillas and chimpanzees also do, they make a little moss ball for moisture. It's a behavior that could be either primate behavior or us, or archaic human. You can find that sort of evidence where they wash out their food. So those are some other things to look for when you're looking for trail talk and you're trying to find tools, or you're trying to find places where you can find ground evidence of what they might eat. You know, look at these funny things that are left behind them. It will help you lead yourself to where they did an activity that you can, you know, gather some hopefully decent information from. Sometimes you'll even find, like partial footprint or handprints or, tracks leading to or away from those little waterways where they rinse their food. So those are some things also to look for. Oh, cool. I'm so glad that you're working on comparisons like that. I would love to see something like that. That might open up some new conversation directions for everyone, Cosmic. Hey, Devin UK. Yeah, also double check that you're subscribed, that you're actually getting notifications on time, and that I can answer your posts or your comments, because I'm noticing there are some hangups. Some people have not been getting their notifications in time. Some people have had difficulties getting responses from me because I can't, for some reason, sometimes I can't comment to you or you can't comment to me. Please let me know. Otherwise, please double check your subscription and make sure your notifications have been turned on and nobody's rearranged your settings. A lot of people have been saying stuff like that over the last few months. They might be having problems, and you might be as well and not know it. Please double check stuff. Okay. Nick, I've had what I believe is dream telepathy, where they will speak to me. What are your opinion on that topic? Well, my opinion on that topic is I will tell you a small story. See, it was 2019, January 18th, if I remember correctly. I ended up running out of gasoline on my way up to Salem, Oregon. So I had to leave my vehicle behind and try to walk the back roads into Salem to go get gas. Well, it's only 4 miles on the highway, but it's almost 15 on the back roads. Consequently, I spent a little time out one night, and I also ran out of gasoline quite late, so I spent more than one night out, and it was also freezing during that time, so it was a pain in the butt to move. Anyway, that aside, the very first night out, I was trying to find, an access road where I had, off of where I had parked, and I left my vehicle in a secure area where somebody could watch it. But it was, kind of an isolated place with very sparse housing in the area, so I figured I better get into town, get my gasoline, and get back. Can't hitchhike on the highway, so walk the back road. Started to get stormy, which is not uncommon for that time of year here. So I couldn't find the road to exactly where I needed to go, because I was busy trying to figure out which route, because I had four options, which roadway actually was the back road. So I ended up in a kind of a sparsely housed farming area. And I realized, I'm not going to be walking anywhere here real soon. Clouds are coming in. It's going to be a downpour. I better find some shelter or get into a position where I'm not likely to be struck by lightning. Because that time of year, when you have storms in this area, you have a lot of lightning. So you don't camp under a freaking tree. So I found myself a nice spot in the neighborhood that I thought would be good location. And I'd already walked up. I was going to try to get some help from a person in the house, but everybody's lights were off. I didn't want to be knocking on anybody's door in the middle of the night and get a gun stuck in my face. Not uncommon for farm folk in this area to do that. So I figured I'd just go back half a mile and get into the field, lay down and take a night's rest, get up in the morning and try to head into town. Because, it was flat enough nobody had noticed me, and it wasn't in an area where car lights had hit me, and it was far enough off the road, nobody bothered by me. So I'm heading back down from this person's house, and I'm passing this field, and I noticed there's something in the field that wasn't there when I walked up just 20 minutes earlier. Looked like a big haystack or a big freaking boulder that I missed somehow. And it's 30 feet on the other side of the fence line. Maybe 40 feet from the road if you count the ditch. And it's an old gravel road, it's not paved or anything. So I'm watching this rock, or what I think is a rock. And then I'm realizing as I'm walking by it, it's turning to face me. I see the head turn, I see the shoulders kind of turn, I see a knee come down, because they'd been sitting this way, and then the knee comes down, and I'm like, oh God, I'm walking by a fucking Bigfoot. Alright, I better explain to him why the heck I'm here, what the heck I'm doing, and why I might be needing to take refuge in a place they are also inhabiting. So I explained to the shadow, and I walk over, get a little better look, or try to. It wasn't a very good moon that night, so I couldn't get a real good look. Couldn't see facial features, anything like that. I could just tell it was something breathing, and it moved, and it was at me. Okay, not a fucking rock. So I explained to this shadow, probably a cryptid, hey, I'm going to be camping down, down there, about a half mile. Ran out of gas, got my gas can, got my dog. Sorry guys, trying to get gasoline. Don't mean to disturb you. Trying to stay out of the storm. Yeah, I'll be camping underneath my umbrella. I have one of those great big, stadium style umbrellas, which if you lay sideways under the thing, mostly would keep you out of the rain. Thank God I grabbed it that night. Also my fatal mistake, because it had a metal shaft. Duh. So, which later attracted some lightning to me. So I'm sleeping, and it's raining. The dog and I are cuddled up. He's in my backpack with my pillow, because I grabbed a bag, I grabbed some clothes. I always keep kind of an emergency bag, with a couple of cans of food, at least one change of clothes, a couple pairs of socks, stuff like that. In the event that I run out of gasoline in the middle of freaking nowhere, I don't want to be walking to town a mess, So I grabbed my bag, and I was sleeping on that, had my dog next to me. It was pouring rain, and all of a sudden I get this dream. In this dream, it's weird. It's black and blue in color. The background is black like a negative, but instead of seeing the white of a negative, I'm seeing blue coloring, like electric blue light. And this figure is talking to me in my dream. We're sitting across a little campfire from each other talking. And the thing that's across the campfire from me is this really old Native American looking man in the dream. He's got a couple feathers in his hair. He's got a couple of long braids. He's got an unusual looking facial structure. He's got a really long upper lip and a really almost primate looking structure. So I ask him, what are you? He says, sun-faced man. And I'm conversing in the dream with him. Why is he a sun-faced man? Why is he talking to me in a dream? What's going on? He tells me he was an orphan. His parents died in a forest fire. Family of Guanchan Oma had found him. They had adopted him. They raised him as their own. And he had become their medicine person. And, I was telling him about my plight. I ran out of gasoline. I'm trying to get into town. I'm sleeping in the rain. And then in the dream, he all of a sudden lunges forward at me very fast. What did he say? Move! Startled me awake, scared the living poo out of me. I threw the umbrella off of me. Thank God. As the umbrella was airborne, lightning struck the tree next to me about 30 feet away. The ground at this point's got like an inch of water on it. I'm grabbing my dog. I am dog cradled in arm, me on one leg up, dog on my leg, trying to force myself to stand. My other knee is still on the ground. and I get hit by the residual crackle from the fingers of lightning come across. We both got fried pretty good. Though if I had not been off the ground and I had not pulled my dog off the ground, we both might have suffered heart attacks. So if that's telepathy, if that's dreamscaping, whatever that dream was that I experienced, may have potentially saved my life that night. Medicine men, especially in the Navajo, Hopi, those tribal people, they describe spiritual dreams and spiritual experiences being blue lightning in a black background. So, to me, I think that medicine man was trying to help me and save me. Mind you, he also left me 2 bags of... he went and stole 2 bags of returnable cans for me to turn in. I hadn't touched. I had looked at them, I had seen them on the person's porch, and he didn't bring them immediately. I didn't get those bags of cans at the campsite where I was that first night until I got back with gasoline the following day. And then I drove back by to say thank you and leave a gift where I talked to the individual and had the dream. I was going to leave a little bit for both of those individuals. And where I'd had the dream were the 2 bags of cans all of a sudden sitting. And I don't think the person brought them down there and dropped them off because there was no reason. I wasn't there anymore. And the individual never knew I needed gasoline. So whatever brought those 2 bags of cans down probably stole them for me. So that's kind of how I view some of their dreamscaping, because they do have the ability to walk into your dreams like medicine people do. Okay. Dishes, there are native stories in many cultures, especially in the north, of them meeting with tribal women, disappearing for 7 years, and coming back unharmed both mentally and physically. Oh yeah, most likely mating. I mean, there were still stories in Weiss's time, in the mid-1800s, the 1830s, 1840s, where Native women would go and have a cryptid husband while still having a Native man as a husband. It wasn't unheard of. And if, in the event that they had a hairy child, they'd put it back at the edge of the forest so the cryptid husband could come and get his child and raise his child. And likewise, if there were... because some people did choose to go off into the wilds with the cryptids. Occasionally, if they'd have a more human-looking child, they'd leave the human child for us to take care of. That was just one of the common things we did, reciprocally, so that both communities would continue to flourish and live. You know, we knew we couldn't live together because of the vast strength difference. You know, them getting angry at you and hitting you once is not the same as you hitting them once. You're a baby slapping an adult, they're an adult squishing a bug. So I can understand why we would have separated, just for our own ability to survive. Okay, Cosmic, as you were describing how they use vines or other things to bundle, wrap some of their food, reminds me of food concepts like grape leaf wraps food in the Middle East and sushi in Japan. Yes, and the other interesting thing, Cosmic, is sword leaf fern fronds. Sword fronds from the sword fern are typically what they wrap their food in. I've seen a lot of sword fern fronds used to put fish or ducks, squirrel, small birds, snakes, frogs, anything and everything on. If it doesn't go straight on, if it's not a bigger thing that goes straight onto a piece of bark, where it's placed on the inner bark that's got a bacterial resistant membrane, food prep, and then they'll put a piece of fern frond over the top. Occasionally they'll also use, what's the other one? It's a wide-leafed, not chokecherry leaves, if I remember right, is the other one that I've seen them use. Chokecherry's got a kind of a big, lobate shaped leaf that's about 6 inches long and about 2 inches across. Those are the leaf types that I've seen that they wrap their food in. So that's another thing to start looking for. The type of debris is also suggestive of some behaviors. Hey, Jason, welcome, Mr. Finch. Glad to see you here. Hope you're well. Been praying for you and your family. Oh, so glad to see you. I'm understanding. Okay, just so I'm understanding that they have holy people or medicine men in their clans as well. Yes, yes, they definitely do. I've run across quite a few different holy people in my life that are definitely cryptids. Up in Washington, one of the individuals that I had tracked and followed for quite some time had a habit of drawing hand-shaped designs with a spiral at the base of the thumb and a little added pinky finger that was drawn separate from the main hand. I understand this particular design as a petroglyphic design that used to be used in ancient times to indicate a cryptid, a Bigfoot. It was how they draw their emblem for themselves, because their lore says that the Guanche lore says that their cryptid parents, one was the spider sloth woman who had 3 fingers, with a baboon father that had 4 fingers. They came out having an additional pinky, 8, that neither their mother or father had. So both parents had thumbs, but neither one had a pinky. So the Guanche lore is that the hand shape with the divided pinky is to remember the spiral of life, the 2 parents with a thumb that had no pinkies, that then gave them a pinky when they were born. So the Guanche creation story also speaks of 2 different cryptids that had then a third different type of cryptid as an offspring. This is again very similar to the old Hunk Papa lore about our creation. The lore that we came from a dogman father that mated with an Oma mother that produced a hairless child. So if either of those stories are true, then it suggests unlike things can produce yet another unlike thing that they can all still breed with. And he turned out to be a holy man. So holy men have a tendency to like to draw a lot. I've found holy women, Bear Woman, she's a medicine woman. She understands poisons and cures. She has a lot of information on resins, sugars, and different fungi. So she's kind of a specialist medicine person. She works both ends of the spectrum, cures and poisons. When I was up in Washington in a different location, not where the individual was that drew the archaic symbol, petroglyphic symbol in charcoal on a stone, that was his marker. I'd track him by his marker because it was so unique. And he was in training to be a medicine person as far as I could tell. from the way he was being directed and where he was being taught certain things. There was another individual up there that that had the indication that they were a medicine person because of the things that they gathered. The individual gathered very specific herbs, in particular mushrooms that would poison only dogs. Um, Stalks from skunk cabbage, bloom stalk. You can use it as a deodorant for bathing. I know it smells horrible, but it acts kind of like aloe vera. It washes soot, soil, dirt, grime, clay, crap out of your hair, takes stuff off your skin, removes odor from your body, rinses away clean. It's a natural emollient, emulsifier, etc. So there's, over the years I've found lots of places, even recently with a lot of the pigment grinding that's going on, it's likely that the pigment grinding is not being done by an individual that doesn't have a medicinal background, because pigments applied to surfaces like your face, your body, those are religious. Those have to be overseen by somebody, or you have to be directed and shown how to do these things properly with prayer. So all of that kind of behavior is heavily suggestible or suggestive of there being medicine people within their communities, much like we had shamans and medicine people within our tribal communities. And that also is exactly what my grandmother claimed too. She said they live like indigenous people, they act like indigenous people, and they behave and have laws like indigenous people. It's just they've never modernized, is the way she always put it to me. It's just they still live like they always have. Okay. Shizzle. That is what the one that the mind spoke with me said. We have, he was, Rondo was his name, in short. Have you ever looked up the name, Rondo? Because sometimes when they give you words or names, you can place the language. And in this area, in this valley, there probably got to be at least half a dozen different kinds of genetic backgrounds culturally. Because I found, you know, Asiatic languages, it's Japanese, Chinese, Tagalog, that's Filipino, Peshat, which is Middle Eastern. I found a couple of native languages. So if the language is already indication, then there's quite a different selection throughout this state, probably up and down the west coast too. You know, over the years, my family introduced me to roughly, I don't know, probably somewhere between 20 and 30 different family groups. Some of them I went into their bed system. Some of them I was taken to their religious sites and instructed about what their religious behaviors were. So, from what I've seen, they are very definitely just really archaic. They have a lot of variation. They speak a lot of different languages. They have a lot of different characteristics, you know, tool types, etc. They, to me, seem like just little niches of preserved ancient history that we can't access completely. Okay. Okay, I remember hearing that a spiral spinning towards the right is good. Left hand spiral spinning left or anti-clockwise indicates negative portal zone. Have you heard this? Well, that's getting to magic and concepts of magic and the effects of one's willpower on the world around you kind of thing. That's actually also a more modern concept from the Middle Ages. I don't know as they get into left or right stuff, other than a right hand is considered bad by the Bigfoot because it is the hand that you go to war with. You strike with your dominant hand. Natives see it the same way. This is your striking hand. This is also the hand that is most commonly cut off in indigenous cultures for doing bad things or wrong. Get your right hand cut off. That's a clue right there. Yeah, and I still have allergy issues. In almost every ancient culture, the left hand is your life hand because it is your receiving hand. It is the hand that you most commonly catch a baby with. Yeah, because you're already doing something else. You're helping with the other hand. You're reaching for something with your right hand. The baby, you grab the head, left hand. It's your receiving hand. Left and right, east, west. Do you lay down with the rotation of the planet or you lay across it? That's about as far as native concepts of left, right, bad, good forces. You always receive. You pay respect with your prayer hand, your left hand, and you strike your enemy with your right hand. A lot of indigenous cultures around the world think the same way. I think that's probably one of the most archaic ways of thinking about it, the most ancient way. So I think some of what we put on, our assumptions, the things that we think we are seeing, is because we're reflecting through the lens of modern back into history. So we're putting our modern concepts of magic or teleportation or devices when we can't describe it or understand it at its real, what's really going on. And it's no fault. It's what we do. We try to class, categorize, differentiate, pinpoint, and find similarities in things. That's how we reason our world. It's how we look at our world. It's how we understand our world. So there's going to be, in any field of research, a period of time, and that might be a very short period of time. It might be a couple of decades, where concepts and reality are jumbled because we don't have a clear understanding yet of the circumstances of a particular behavior. Why it's there, what's going on behind the scenes, what's the critter doing in order to disappear? Are they walking into another dimension? Are they simply removing themselves from your ability to see? Are they taking advantage of some prism concept in light that we are currently unaware of? Is it an optical illusion? These are all factors we don't know yet. Personally, I think some of it's prism. It's literally taking advantage of the light wave and knowing how to move within the light. I know that sounds really weird, but it also means that they wouldn't be disappearing. They'd just be appearing to disappear without really going anywhere. They're just taking advantage of, say, you know how if you are in a dark room, in a theater room, and you're standing in the recess behind the main light, which is driving straight down in front of you, you are not perceivably there until you step into the light. You appear to disappear when you back away from it. It's an optical illusion. Potentially some of the behaviors that we think are alien or extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional might be a play of light that we are unaware of. Just possibly. Who knows? We don't know yet. We don't have enough observation of them, nor do we have enough steady footage of them with clarity to know much about any of these behaviors. Okay, Jason, my mom and dad and myself are doing well. Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. Oh yeah, I've been doing good except for, you know, ending up with some allergy issues because I was dumb. Rondolac. Rondolac. That's old Nordic? Rondolac. I think that's an old Nordic name, isn't it? Have you done a search and found what genre of name or place origin of that particular name, Rondelak? That sounds Nordic or Finnish. It sounds European in that regard. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. It's been a long time since I've read any books on names. Okay, Cosmic Sovereign, and also in regards to those origin stories, might suggest that there are many more dogmen or Sasquatch humanoid hybrids out there than we might realize. Oh yeah, oh definitely. I'm pretty sure there are. And my guess is that my grandmother in her 200 to 240 hair covered, I don't think she was including dinosaurs or non-hairy cave dwellers like crawlers or wraiths or the flying heads of the Appalachia or the Ozarks, wherever they are. Some of the weirder cryptids out there, I don't think she was grouping those in that estimation. Um, I think she was restricting that 200 to 240 being just the humanoid-like ones, like us, that are hairy but intelligent. Like anyway, no, I think there's probably even more than what she understood. I think she was being kind of exclusionary in some of it because she didn't ever tell me how many dinos there were or what kind of oddities may have come out of the chrysalis babies and the little stone babies that supposedly are eggs that develop into humanoids, that she claimed were things like brownies or pixies and the little people. And some of those are maybe another genre of critter that we don't even know about, too. And God only know what shape those things might turn into. Because she said that the little chrysalis stone baby creatures that take 30,000 years to be born can be influenced by where they are laying in the soil, the things that they hear around them, the things that they experience while still in chrysalis form, that the world around them kind of shapes them into what they can be and what they turn out to be. So, and that they perpetually grow and change and go through stages of being a moth, so to speak. So, who knows what those kind of cryptids could turn out to look like? Or what kind of platypus pea soup their genetics might be. Pardon me. But they could be quite unique. And maybe that's the kind of DNA sample they got. Maybe they got a chrysalis child's DNA and don't even know it. A stone baby's DNA. Which would make a lot of sense. That would be a really good reason why it would be attached to so many different critters. Because it's probably gone through all those forms up until the point of now where it's taken the form it currently has. And that's just its last sloughing. The last time it changed forms. Because some cryptids supposedly change forms every time they go through a phase. And it's only the one type. But that one type can have multiple different outcomes. However that works. But that's the lore. I'm not even going to attempt to try to understand it or explain it. I'm just going to tell everyone like I was told. Okay. Hey, Big Island. Hey. Mahanoy. Good to see you. Sorry I've been tied up on the phone. Let's go. Oh, no worries, Phil. Uh, you'll be able to rewatch it. I'm not quite sure where I'm hanging on the battery here. I'm not doing too bad. My doggo, she would like to go out and go potty, and me personally thinks I want to go out and have a cigarette. So I can either continue this and you can enjoy coming outside with me. Might be able to hear some of the bizarre behavior that's been going on around this area recently. So last couple of nights, it's been really quiet. From like 7 o'clock on, it's been getting incredibly dead silent. So night before last, there was a small group of probably 3 or 4 younger ones. Sounded like they were turkey hunting. So uphill a little bit from here, just not even like next house over area, just across the street. Heard a turkey gobble, heard a tap. Then over here in this corner, between the yards, I hear what sounds like a little fake turkey gobble. And another tap. So my guess was there was a bunch of younger juveniles out here in this cul-de-sac trying to chase down some of the little turkey herd that comes through here, because there's a group of turkeys that come through here, about 10 or so, 15 of them maybe. And then last night, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody was awake. There was no lights on. Nobody was outside, because, everybody works days in this neighborhood. I'm the only one that's the night owl. So I go out, and I get this cough. Now I had walked into the yard because I thought I heard something walking on the concrete, like a shuffling. But I'm like, okay, what? It doesn't sound like a deer. It's not clicking. It sounds more like somebody walking in a pair of house shoes or something. So I walked a little further into the yard, tried to take advantage of the front light out there to see if I could see anybody, because nobody's lights were on. If somebody's out wandering in the middle of the night, that might be needing help. Couldn't see anybody. But I got coughed at. Yeah, it's really weird. So I took a step back, took another puff, got coughed at again. Took a couple more steps back. Continued to smoke my cigarette. I got coughed at like 5 times until I was put back to my door. So I had to think about that. Why am I getting coughed at? Coughing, it's friendly, but it also is a warning. Coughing, it's another one of those where it can have more than one meaning, sound. It's not necessarily a call that always means friend. Sometimes it means stop. So this one made me think it was being applied contextually as stop or something no-go. So then I started thinking about, well, who's my little skunk friend trying to introduce me to? Is it maybe an Ishka or cryptid like maybe a young booger person? I'm being warned, don't look him in the face. No look. So once I was finished with my cigarette, I went around to the backyard. I went through the house, go into the backyard. And I looked back in the area where my trade goes on, because there's a little, as you can tell, there's a shed back there. There's a little walkway. Well, there was orange eye shine back there at about the 5-foot level. I'm like, oh, different cryptid. Not a skunk. All skunk have red eye shine. So I was potentially being let know, don't, the rules, don't look at this one. Be a friend, don't look at this, don't look at my friend. Might hurt you. So after that I turned to the side. And then when I went out next time to have a cigarette before I went to bed by only 3 in the freaking morning, I put my eyes down, I kept my eyes down. Just to make sure that if he had brought a small, more aggressive species, I would not be breaking the rule and getting myself accidentally thumped by somebody to take offense that I wasn't respecting them by accident. So, I don't know what I might find out there tonight. So if you want to hang around with me while I go out and have a cigarette, I'll just step out and have a cigarette. Otherwise, awesome. You'll smoke with me. Cool. Let me throw some slippers on and let me get out there. And I have had some very, very strange, there was some sounded like automatic gunfire up on the hillside today that was heavily suppressed. What are we barking at now, baby? You've been antsy all day and you puffed up twice today on your rear end. You're puffing up again. What? Alright, what are you freaking out at? You usually get all excited when the little scucking boy gets here and you want to go out. And all of a sudden you've been barking and getting puffed up. Another indication it's not the normal thing in the yard. And it's been overcast. It was overcast most of the day. It finally almost cleared up. We had like just partial clouds around dusk. So it makes me wonder if I'm going to see any stars out there or not. Or what the general take might be on, I have a light on out there even. It's just real duskish. So let's just go out. I'm not going to put any light on of any kind. Just see what we hear, if anything. It's probably going to be silent as hell out there right now. Coming out? Yeah, this is your last potty chance, baby. Now let me turn around so the houses are behind me. Yeah, that's about the extent of the light level here. Now here. I'll give you a view of the shadowed yard. That way you don't actually watch me smoking my cigarette. Yeah, still pretty quiet. All you hear is a few cars on the road. Oh yeah. Well, unfortunately I took up my dad's habit. My mom never smoked. Oh well, no, I can't say that. She would occasionally smoke a Swisher Sweet cigar. But my dad, my God, he'd smoke, I don't know, nonstop, every day. And I didn't start smoking until I was in my 30s. Which is very uncommon. It was because I couldn't stand the smell of my husband's cigarettes, so my dumbass joined him. Yeah, never. Yeah, it's back to being overcast and sprinkling a little bit. Yeah, last night I didn't make it any further than about this point in my yard when I got coughed at by something way the heck over there. The turkeys come down this way. Now that you can really see my hand. Voicing an opinion there, puppy? So I hope that today's little live has been helpful and enlightening, and maybe I gotten some creative juices flowing on avenues that you can create that will give you some supported evidence. And then if anybody can get any kind of footage of one of these guys making a tool, that would add some concrete to the pour. And over there, that tree line at night, excuse me, where you get this kind of a black mass, I'll get knocks from that tree at night. And if you notice, there's a huge black mass in the middle of that tree. It looks like a freaking ball of material. My guess is something sits in that tree at night over this neighborhood. Snap sticks. In fact, I think that was just a knock now. It's one of the common places I get knocked at from, and you know, they can see me right on the front porch when I step out. So, you know, part of being at ground central in any research location is to figure out where you consistently get knocked at from. If I had climbing gear and, you know, permission, I'd climb that tree to see what that ball is. But I don't have climbing gear, and I don't have that person's permission to invade their yard. But I'd like to. Then also down the hill from that tree, going north, basically that direction, about another block, is another tree that's got to sit up in top of it. It's got obvious wear because the branches have grown thicker from use than any other branches on the tree. Key factor that something large is sitting in the area and the tree has to support it, so it thickens its branches to accommodate the mass. Something that a bear doesn't do. Bears won't habitually sit in the same tree, but primates will, so do humans. We call them stationary points or sentinel points. Oh, you're sniffing the air to the hillside that we normally hear a lot of activity on. Rainy nights, so they don't have a tendency to like to move around a lot. They get, it seems like a lot of them don't like rain. They don't like getting wet. They're like us or other primates. They'll grab a bush, a branch, or, you know, something to umbrella themselves with. What you doing? You want to go back in? Are you tired of being outside because the rain's picking up? Uh-huh. Okay. I've been ordered. It's okay. I've had enough drags. I'll probably get back in anyway. Alright, pup. Let me switch this back around. Alright, doggo. Sorry for the darkness, guys. And yeah, I live in the dark a lot because I don't have a problem seeing at night. I'll throw my back on. I'll answer the last few questions. And then, you know, if there's anything else to be discussed, bring it up. Otherwise, you'll probably see me next Saturday again, if everything goes well. Okay. Dishes will both parents of mine smoked, but my mother quit. Also the green version. Ah, gotcha. We have had a very bright moon full in the sky, even blasting through clouds past few nights here in Maryland, Pennsylvania, central area. Oh wow. Yeah, no, we've had so much cloud cover, all we get is kind of a glow, that's about it. Oh, just there's a little, very much to ponder and study on. Thank you for everything you are doing. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm trying to, to drag this into a more scientific perspective. I hate to say it that way, but until some biologist or primatologist or anthropologist, etc., steps out on that limb and takes a chance on this topic again, we aren't going to have an advocate in our corner. With some of the people that passed on recently, Dr. Jen Vandenagel a couple of years ago, now Meldrum, uh, we don't have much in the way of scientific mainstream people in the field. And we got Moira, um, and a few of the other show type people. But they seem to be kind of resistant, and so do the corporations, especially the Hollywood types, really digging into the cryptid thing and what it might potentially actually mean. Probably because they're terrified of laws. Well, the laws are already in place. They're already functioning. We don't have to change a damn thing. All we have to do is recognize that they're there and, maybe consider doing some things slightly different. But we aren't going to have to make massive changes. I mean, they're already living in an environment that they survive just fine in. The only issue is we keep pressuring that environment. Maybe use other products. Stop using some of the things that tear down their forests. Stop selling their forests to foreign interests. But we aren't really good at even preserving our own habitat, so who knows about that. Okay. I do not have any issue with night seeing after my eyes adjust, thankfully. Maybe genetics, maybe adapted from my nature, living lifestyle and living areas growing up. Oh yeah, well I grew up on a ranch. We didn't have many outdoor lights, so you had to stumble around the flippin' dark, carry a candle, or have a flashlight with you. Especially if it was dark of the moon, you couldn't see 4 feet in front of your face in the ranch. Pitch black. So, making your way to the outhouse, you better know the way. Otherwise, you might get lost. Or take your flashlight. So I just got used to, walking out the door with nothing. Because, if you got an emergency situation, you got an animal out or you got, something attacking an animal, half the time you don't have time to grab anything. You just grab what is essential and go. And if the only thing that is essential is the rifle, because some dog is tearing your livestock apart, you go grab the rifle. You can always find that thing running. Any light it crosses. Okay, I hate to say that way too, but the nature of our creatures like to hear science and technology, not accounts of events, has to be recorded and seen. Yep, for themselves to believe it real. Yeah, that's all very, very true. And all of the grounds for evidence can be incredibly suggestive and readable, and you can glean a lot of information from it. But until somebody produces the creature, and I'm not thinking that a dead body is going to do it, and the reason I don't think that a dead body is going to do it is because they're all cryptids, Bigfoot, and in some states, the skunk ape by name, are all listed in the lower 48 as non-shootable creatures in the woods. The no-shoot hunting list. Bigfoot is on the lower 48, every state in the Union, except Alaska and Hawaii, has a no-shoot rule for crypts, for Bigfoot specifically. So if you do shoot one to try to scientifically prove that it exists, it is likely going to be confiscated. You are likely going to be threatened. You are probably going to be told to sign a non-disclosure, and then that is the end of it. And you have one more dead Cro-Magnon human, Australopithecus person, or whatever kind of Neanderthal, Homo sapien critter thing it might have been. Which actually means it's, that's all in itself a form of racial discrimination I don't even want to fucking think about. So, that's something to be considered also. How do you bring something to light without intentionally producing a body because that body might be of a humanoid? We've never culturally been in this position before because every humanoid species that we found modernly looks like us. No hair. That's the biggest factor here. They still have hairy bodies. They still have ape-like features. Okay. Just until you can sell a video of it and make money off it. It isn't real to some people also. Oh yeah, I know. There's a lot of I hate to say it, a lot of the researchers that are in the field that are, that go to hotspots. They seem to have that kind of movie production glaze about them. It's all well and good if you're producing a show after the fact. That's a perfect scenario for that sort of attitude. But if you're trying to discover a new species, or shed light on a species that you might be minimally aware of, that's not a good avenue. It's not a good approach. It doesn't really produce answers. It doesn't produce relevant information either. It produces a lot of conjecture, produces a lot of theories, a lot of pet theories, but not a lot of supported theories. Not a physical tool that you can categorize. Not a pigment type that's been previously used, like ochre. Ochre is a pigment type that has been indigenously used for generations in several different cultures around this world. So that in itself is more suggestive than some of the other stuff that I've seen out there that people call evidence or whatever. It's my frustration level with some of the research that's out there. Is it just it isn't helping. It seems more like it's just Hollywood stage production and running for the glam shot and running for the clickbait video that's going to get you a million views. That's not science. That's not even pretend biology. But anyway, my opinion. You like me or dislike me for it. Sorry, I'm not going to ever get anything with frills, lace, or glamour on my channel. You're going to get grounds for, current evidence, what the heck I think about it, old lore, whether or not that old lore tells me anything about what the heck I'm seeing on the ground. Because that's always where my reality level's been. I've not indulged in anything else because it was never shown anything else, and I was never exposed to anything else. And over the years of me going out in the field by myself, I've never proven anything else to myself that is any different than what I was originally taught. That they're just an archaic, leftover humanoid species that we still interact with as human beings, and that we can still mate with, and that still live in their old ways. That's it. That's all it's ever been for me. In fact, getting online, it was quite an eye-opener. I didn't know there were all of these weird theories. I had no clue about half the stuff that people are saying about these things. It was not even on my radar. I was completely unaware of it and baffled by some of it, to be honest, because I'm like, oh, well, I understand what that is. Yeah, I know that's dream walking, or I know that's wind walking. You don't. All right. It's just difference of education, difference of opinion because of the education. And yeah, I know I'm incredibly biased about this topic. And I'm going to stick to my bias. Because so far I haven't found anything that's disproven my bias sufficiently for me to go, oh God, I was wrong. In fact, I kind of get the other end of it. Oh God, I found something else that fits in. What the hell happened here? That's more my angle of it. It's always, oh wow, that does fit. That's a piece I can track to something else, and that's a tool that we already have in our record. Different perspective, just big difference. That's all. Oh, I'm glad it's helped open your eyes, Super, because once people realize that they're a humanoid of some kind, it's going to be a lot easier for people to come to terms with how to research them. All of a sudden you're not hunting for a wild monkey anymore. You're looking for a ancient humanoid. It's going to change the way you think it, about the topic in general. It's going to make you re-examine things. It's going to make you um, come up with other avenues of trying to create interactions. You may not, the glibness in some of this will be removed once we start to understand they're probably an archaic humanoid. And it, might give a more realistic perspective overall, too. One would hope, anyway. Okay, just ever since my first encounter, I have always felt like they are like us, but different, in the sense that there is a fork in the road that has been mapped out in history. Yeah, well, like I said, when you start looking, I might even just go get an anthropological book to see if I can find the particular image I'm after. So when you start looking at the human family tree and you start looking at the area where timeline area of Lucy and back. Lucy was what, 500,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, or 1.5 million? 1.5. And then there was the male that was found that pushed back to what, 2 or 2.5. So that prehistoric genre, that particular area of time, 2.5 million years ago, we had about 6 branches to our family tree. And one of those branches was the robustus side, a much larger version of what we would have considered a kind of Neanderthal-like creature. And it's somewhere in that set of break-offs is my guess as to where our family tree is parted from Bigfoot. I think they are part of our family tree. I think they are a very close cousin. And I think some of the shadow DNA that we don't have an answer for yet, that we can't pinpoint as Nosophin or Neanderthal or any of the other known varieties, some of those shadows might prove out to be, maybe something like the Robustus or the Habalaris or some of the other uh, ancient died out cousin species of ours. Maybe they didn't die out. Maybe they just got more reclusive. You know, Maybe we're selling ourselves short a little bit historically. Ah, windwalking. Um, when I was younger, my mother taught me a technique of walking where you place your foot with even pressure on the ground and in an even roll when you walk. So you're not striking the ground with your heel. You're not striking the ground with the ball of your foot. when you walk, and we'll just do this. Let me turn this. So when you normally walk, your heel hits, then your toe comes down. Okay, so you get this roll to your foot. That's how you walk, okay? And you push off with your toes. In order to eliminate your footprint, you have to eliminate the dig of the heel and the pressure from your front toes as you move forward. So I was taught to walk from the side of my foot. Leaves no profile on the ground when you move. So instead of slamming and pushing, you walk in unison with the ground. When you walk with that roll, you don't leave any prints. It's how ninjas were taught to walk. I was taught to walk like that when I was 12 years old. My mother made me practice for 2-3 years before she put me through the test. On a carpet, very similar to the plush on this one, 1/4 inch. She laid out rice paper. Told me she wanted to be able to draw on it when I was done walking on it. I left one heel mark. No more prints. Somewhere in my storage unit, I still have that piece of paper with my heel print and the other, 10 feet that I walked with not a single print on it. I am willing to let anybody test that. Once I pull it out, I will show it to you. I'll film it, record it. But I had to learn to walk like that because of where I was going to be doing my turnout. Because the location had 2 dangerous species of cryptids, I had to be able to make my fingerprints, or not my fingerprints, my footprints, I had to make my footprints disappear. Meaning if I was walking in loose sand, if I was walking on dust on rock, if I was walking on any surface other than absolute solid rock, if I was being hunted by a cryptid that could kill me, eat me, and do whatever the hell they wanted to me, I had to make my prints disappear so they couldn't track me. Because they track too. So that's why the tactic is there. They're trying to hide from each other. Or you. It's so you don't get eaten. And it's actually a method of walking that you can learn yourself. It takes a lot of practice. You have to start, learning how to balance. You have to start learning how your frame works. And you have to have a lot of core strength. Because if you don't have some massive core strength, you can't control every pressure point when you're placing your foot. And you'll make an accidental dig. You'll make an accidental toe print. You'll make a spot that's noticeable. It's just a way of walking. It takes a lot of time to master. But it can be explained. It's not extra dimensional, it's just a way of walking. Some native warriors used to use the walk. Some still do. Some still know the technique. A lot of scouts and native trackers still know how to walk this way. So it's a learned practice trait. It's just something we don't talk about. How does an Indian disappear? Well, you make your tracks disappear first. Then you can make the rest of you disappear in any bush, crevasse, behind any tree, up any tree, under any bush, underneath any pile of debris. Any place your enemy ain't gonna look, you can disappear. It's just a tactic. Keep you safe. Okay. It is obvious that the gatekeepers of the information we receive do not like to change from present understanding because it would prove they were wrong and have been wrong. Yeah. Yeah, no shit. It also disproves, to a certain extent, that Darwinism is real. Because it doesn't mean that we changed forms to become a modern man. Means we were born this way. Okay, dog. Just a quince bloom out in the front yard killing me. Yeah, the quince started blooming in the front yard this last week. I can tell the difference. Sorry, guys. I know. You worry for it, dog. I love you. She's my little assistant here. You alright? You worry for it, dog. I love you, baby. You good girl. Alright. Now that was over. Oh my god. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, that's cool. That's how I walk when I'm stalking food and tracking. Scouting, yeah. A lot of hunters use the same walk, and some of them don't even realize it. Get really practiced, you wear a pair of moccasins, you'll never fucking be seen. Your track will never be noticed. If you have nice, thick, padding on your feet, you aren't going to be noticed again. You know, the track will disappear very easily. Oh. Yes. Yes, it does. You don't have a tendency to kick up leaves as much. And gravel doesn't have a tendency to crunch as much. Loose material, stuff like that. So it's a very advantageous walk. Should have taken my antihistamine this morning. I've been trying to knock off taking them for a second because take too many of those things, you end up falling asleep for half a day. Oh my god. Sorry, guys. It looks like my phone is finally running out of battery. It's powering down a bit. So I think I'm going to go take care of myself, and hopefully you guys will have a great evening. Do the sidewalk again with your hand. Was off screen. Oh. Okay, not a problem. So, the way the walk goes, in fact, we might even be able to do, well, nah, let's not try to do that. But anyway, so instead of heel strike, see if I can get you enough of an angle. Instead of the heel strike and dig, roll forward, it's just a round walk. So you're hitting with the side of your foot, coming down with your side of your foot, and you're just laying your foot across. So it's just a different way of using your foot. If you still had the extra flexibility in your foot, this would be a more natural walk for you anyway, because your foot's going to be adapting to the ground as you move. So it makes sense that sometimes their prints are going to just disappear. So it's just this undulation in the walk that completely changes the dynamic of it. And when you look at how many times I've even, you know, put my hand down there, there's hardly any mark. You do one strike and you're going to have a bunch of marks. So, hope that helps a bit. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for everything you're doing to do for the subject of knowledge and understanding. Yeah. Well, you know, having a different perspective and maybe trying to fit it into a genre that we have some knowledge about could lead to a greater understanding. And that's all I'm after. You know, my grandmother was correct, and these things had been originally on the different tribal roles, and they were historically recognized as humans, and then they were booted off those roles because they were too archaic before we even knew what archaic was. Then we're committing a horrible crime against them, and we're not even aware of the fact. And to me, that's really bad. And I'd like to correct that, or at least give an avenue to later generations that might be able to correct that. Because I don't want to see them going extinct because we don't know what they are, especially if they're humanoids. How much knowledge could we learn from them? We could learn, for instance, what they call each of these tools. We'd know what their names were for a scraper. We'd know what their name was for an arrowhead. We could show them how, or they could show us how they use these things, how they make them. We could ever build a relationship and contact them. I mean, they're so, in the fact that they speak and that they know their own lore, how much of our own history that we're completely clueless about because we have no physical written record of is still preserved in their lore. How well educated are their kids about our own planet? They're probably better educated than us, especially if they've been unintruded upon, more or less. They have the ability to keep their history. They have the ability to keep their traditions and their old ways, and we don't know anything about it. Yeah, you're welcome, guys. You have a good one. Seems like I better get out of here. It's almost been 3 hours. Hopefully I haven't talked you to death. Thank you, everybody. I agree 100% and hope to learn and do the same. The crime has been committed, and it's only right that it to be stopped and corrected. That states it so perfectly. Thank you to Shizzle. Because knowing what I know about Jen, I never want anybody to mistake her for an ape and shoot her. Because I know she's a lot more than that. And I want other people to know that too. So anyway, you're welcome, everyone. Have a good night. And I'll try to make these chats, you know, a little more informative and educational, and, you know, hopefully maybe add in a few more visual references for people so you can start digging in books. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you. Take care.